Hey everybody, welcome or hello again. I am Pixie People. I hope you're expecting a lot of violence because until death. Get it because my name is Pixie People and pigs are eating people? You get it. Let's just get into it. Alright, so Deku wakes up freaking chained to in a glass area where All Might was, where All for One was, uh, trapped after the battle with All Might. I can't remember the name. And then Deku just stares at this skinny guy with drooping hair and looks like a freaking skeleton who's just staring at Deku. They do, then All Might clicks a button and he then speaks over a microphone into Deku's uh, cage, which Deku calls it, saying, "You are Izuku Midoriya, son of Inko Midoriya. You were lost a couple years, about 8 years ago, and you were caught committing genocide and cannibalism. But we are willing to forego some years off your sentence if you choose to join the hero course in UA." And Deku just sits there. They just think Deku didn't understand it, but actually he's just contemplating. He just says, "How much?" "About 50 years." "About 50 years off your 55-year sentence." 5 years. If I do real good, do I not get to be in these chains? It just depends on how good you are. And then Deku says, "Yes, let's shake on it." And then All Might gets confused. And then Deku shatters all the chains with just a big flex. There's obviously chains around his wrist and legs. Actually, not legs. He snapped those off with his hands. Then he puts his hand on the glass. All Might gets a bit spooked, so he backs up from the glass. And then Deku breaks it with his fingertip. Like he picks up one of his fingers and then breaks all of the glass. And then Deku walks through the glass. You can hear like the glass crunching while Deku walks up to him. And then he sticks his hand out. Then All Might, bit uh, concerned, does shake his hand. And then Deku just goes back to the cell and sits down. Then closes his eyes and takes a nap. A couple weeks later, actually a couple days ago, Deku is talking to this officer after a couple of days. This is the weekend, by the way. It's Saturday and Sunday. Next week's about to happen. And then they all just, and eventually the cop agrees, yes, you are able to have 50 years off your sentence. Only because All Might's secretary said so. And then Deku just agrees that he'll be good. And then he just walks off. Then just opens up the door from the... and then meets All Might. And then they walk to school. Until All Might gets a message on his phone. Immediately calls someone. And then a limousine shows up with not Nezuo in, telling the kid to get in. And Deku just sits there, while All Might just jumps off. And they drive to, then they drive to the school. And then, they get there, and Deku gets out of the vehicle, saying it's nice. Better than the sewers I had to live in for 8 years. Nezu just stares at him, not knowing. Nezu, looks towards Deku with a smile, big warm smile, and then they walk in. And then Deku enters the classroom with Aizawa sitting in the door, sitting at his desk. Then he talks, then Deku sits down with Aizawa, and they start talking. And they start talking. And then they start, and again they start talking. Aizawa says he's gonna have to push you. He's gonna push you to your limit, and probably gonna hurt you. And Deku doesn't believe him at all because he took 3 punches from All Might. But Deku just says, yeah, I know. And then Deku... Okay. And then Deku walks to, what? Yeah. Let's just say Deku walks with Aizawa to a hotel, saying that UA is gonna pay for the hotel and you just have to stay there. And then Deku obviously just walks in, breathes in, breathes out, and then just flops on the couch. And then Deku gets up when his alarm goes off. He didn't know he had an alarm until he looks over to see his cell phone. It's just a flip phone. He just grabs it and puts it in his pocket. Until he realizes he has to change his clothes. And he changes his clothes. While he's putting on his coat, he just tears off the sleeves. See, he just doesn't like... And then Deku starts flicking his hand, thinking it looks good. Looks better than whatever they made him wear. So he just walks. He checks if he has everything, and then heads out. Okay. And then Deku walks to. And then Deku, he finds. Well, gets into class. Everyone gets a bit concerned because it's a freaking alligator. Or is it a crocodile? A crocodile. It's a crocodile. It's a crocodile. It's a crocodile. That's basically their mindset right now. It's a freaking crocodile. And Deku just starts walking in. And then Deku just scrapes, he scrapes his desk and just sits down, waiting until Aizawa shows up. And he's tapping his finger. He starts tapping his. There's a lot of tapping. And everyone gets a bit annoyed. Then Ida tries to get up, but then he just sits right back down, which kind of spooks everyone because they don't really see Ida as the guy who just gets up, that dramatic thing, and then just immediately sits back down. And then they see Deku's fingers stop. Then they look towards his desk and see that. And then sees a chunk torn out of the desk with Deku turning. And then Deku, here's Aizawa enter the room and saying they're just gonna go on a field trip. So let's go. So they all walk in and Deku sits down. Not a single person talks. And then they get off the bus and they just sit there while the girl explains her thing. And then Deku doesn't. And then Deku just stands. And Deku's just chilling. Deku's just chilling though. And then eventually they hear. They turn to see the villains. Hiroshima says, "There's fake villains, cool." Aizawa says, "They're not actually fake villains. They're real." And then they waddle. And then Deku gets caught in the thing. And, yeah, still gets in the water. That was a mistake. So Deku starts flexing. And then we just hear the water changing ever so slightly. And then Sue starts seeing something just flashing through the water. So does Mineta. And then Deku just jumps out of the water, completely bloodied. And then Deku and Siu and Mineta swims up, and then realize they're swimming in blood. Deku just slaughtered every single person in that freaking pool, and then just hops out off the water and then starts swimming towards every zone, killing every single villain that shows up in his way. He smelled all of his his areas. Every sing every single he knows every single class on a student's smell. So basically, if anyone tries to sneak up on him, he'll know if it's a class 1A student or villain. Basically, you're a class 1A student, he'll just knock you out because you tried to attack him. You're a villain, your head is gone, and it could be eaten later. And then Deku just sprints again. He just straight up bolts after saving Koda from getting killed. He squishes the guy's head against a freaking wall, stares at Koda, puts up a peace sign, and then just lets go of his hand, and then just starts. And then Deku just starts running like Joseph Joestar in part 2. He just starts freaking Nigarandioting away from the scene. Eventually, he gets where Aizawa is getting freaking painted in the ground, and then Deku hops up, flexes his arm, punches the Nomu, breaking his entire jaw off. He cut. He broke off one of the parts of the Nomu's arm, but the Nomu just freaking cocks Deku's gut open, actually opening it up, but just hitting him really hard, and then just starts skipping him across, and just starts kicking him across the steps. And then Deku, grips onto the steps before he like slams up. Then he spins, kicks his feet into the ground, and then just shoots straight through Nomu, straight open. And then the Nomu heals immediately. And then and then the Nomu appears behind Deku, just fucking clocks him in the head, spinning him in the air, grabs him. The Nomu grabs Deku by his head, hops up, grabs him by his waist, and then just hits him with a freaking suplex. Basically, Zangief from Street Fighter. And then he grabs Deku's leg and just chucks him into the fountain, chipping off the top of it. And Deku's just struggling to get up this time. That hurt a lot. Eventually, all Kasumane shows up, tries to fight the Nomu. A couple of them get injured, but they're not dead. It's hurting a lot for the Class 1A students because they can't do anything to save their teacher. Until one of them tries to get Bakugo, and then they hear a loud pumping. Think King's horn from there. They hear that, and they're like, get a bit scared. The Nomu actually stops dead in its tracks because its instincts, like as a human and as a bird, just flare it up, just knowing not to hit this guy. And then they hear the horn get louder and louder, and they hear pumping. And then we look towards Deku, whose muscles are growing. Like his back starts freaking expanding, his legs start also expanding. Then he lifts up his hand. We watch his hand, and he slams into the ground, shattering it by also breaking the fountain next to it. And then just appears in front of the Nomu and just bites the Nomu's arm off, and then eats it whole. Shows up, tears the Nomu's head straight off, and then no, and then no, and then Deku just starts freaking stabbing a lot into the Nomu. And then he just keeps tearing into the Nomu until he just stops moving. And he still isn't moving. And then he just won't stop tearing him out. And then All Might shows up, watching Deku. Still got the Nomu. By the way, the Nomu is still alive. Kuchigoroki and Korigiri already left because they know they cannot take this scaly guy. This basically All Might built guy. By the way, his chains are still attached to him. And they actually expanded while he expanded. And they just kept slamming him, the Nomu still. Until All Might shows up, puts his hand on him, tells him to chill. And then then Nomu then Deku stopped punching, got up, and then All Might has to wait for him to the Nomu to regenerate, then do the Nomu fight, knocking it out. Deku could have just kept going, like days, months, years, until the Nomu stopped moving, and then then Deku just stays this buff. Actually, no. He actually just then they hear the pumping again, but they hear it like retracting, and then Deku shrinks. And then Deku looks at everyone in a bit concerned, seeing if they're all right. Everyone's all right. They just got some minor injuries, mostly because Deku stopped Bakugo from getting squished. All right, now that is where I'm gonna leave things for right now. See y'all. Peace. Like, subscribe, hit the post notification bell because we're trying to hit 50 subscribers to hit that 50 subscriber special. See y'all. Peace. You're the best. Remember that.